6 Keys to Experiencing Jehovah Jireh, God's Providence. God is always preparing and providing in our lives. His love and mercy are deeply woven into our existence, often working for us even when we are unaware. However, we frequently miss or fail to recognize this providence of God, either because we don't understand how He works, or because we don't expect Him to act. Therefore, we need to understand how to expect God and experience His provision. In this article, we will delve deeply into 6 keys to experiencing Jehovah Jireh, which will help us find ways to encounter God's providence in our daily lives and be guided by Him. The meaning of Jehovah Jireh and God's work. The term Jehovah Jireh comes from the Hebrew expression meaning the Lord will see or the Lord will provide. This name encapsulates the profound truth that God carefully watches over our lives, knowing our needs in advance and preparing for them. In Genesis 22, when Abraham was about to sacrifice Isaac, God provided a ram, illustrating the meaning of this name. Through this event, we learn how meticulously God meets our needs. Abraham deeply experienced God's faithfulness through this event, realizing that God truly provides for everything. This teaches us that God knows our needs and will provide for them when we trust Him. Experiencing Jehovah Jireh through prayer. Prayer is communication with God, a crucial means of seeking His will and being guided by His ways. Through prayer, we can experience God's guidance and provision. The story of Daniel in the Bible exemplifies the importance of prayer. In Daniel 10, we see that after Daniel prayed for 21 days, God's response came down from heaven. This story highlights the powerful key of experiencing God's providence through prayer. Prayer is not just a way to inform God of our needs, it is a process of experiencing His work. In Daniel's case, God had already heard his prayer and was preparing a response, even as he continued praying. Likewise, through prayer, we can deeply experience Jehovah Jireh, gaining insight into God's plan and feeling His work. Experiencing God's provision through faith. Faith is trusting in God and being assured of His promises. When we approach God with faith, we can experience Jehovah Jireh. In Mark 9, the father of a demon-possessed boy initially lacked faith, but after hearing Jesus' words, he believed. His son was healed through this faith, clearly showing how Jehovah Jireh works. Jesus emphasized that faith is a crucial element in bringing forth God's power. This father's faith not only led to the miracle of healing, but also allowed him to experience God's faithfulness and love during the process. Faith is a vital key to experiencing God's provision. When we trust God with our lives, He leads us in unexpected ways and meets our needs. Experiencing God's provision through obedience. Obedience means acting according to God's commands. When we obey God's instructions, we can experience Jehovah Jireh. The story of the widow at Zarephath in the Bible exemplifies this. She used the last of her oil and flour to make food for Elijah. This act became a pivotal moment for her to experience God's provision. As a result, she experienced Jehovah Jireh's provision with an endless supply of oil and flour. Obedience is the key to receiving the blessings that God has prepared for us. When we obey God's word, He uses that obedience to meet our needs and fulfill His purposes. The widow's obedience was not just a sacrifice, but an expression of her trust in God, which eventually brought abundant provision to her and her family. Experiencing God's provision through thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is not only about being grateful for what God has already given, but also about expressing gratitude in advance for future blessings. The prophet Habakkuk in the Bible experienced Jehovah Jireh, even in the midst of suffering and hardship, by giving thanks to God. Habakkuk 3:17-19 shows us how he maintained his faith by thanking God. His gratitude was a key to drawing out God's amazing grace for his life. Thanksgiving is a way to express trust in what God has done and will do in the future. When we give thanks, God delights in our hearts and prepares new blessings for us. Habakkuk's thanksgiving gave him joy and strength and maintained a deep relationship with God, leading him to experience Jehovah Jireh more deeply. Experiencing Jehovah Jireh by glorifying God. Glorifying God means exalting and praising Him in everything we do. Before raising Lazarus from the dead, Jesus prayed, giving glory to God. This teaches us an important lesson. Even Jesus did not forget to glorify God before anything else. As a result, a miraculous event occurred where Lazarus was brought back to life. Likewise, When we glorified God, we can experience Jehovah Jireh. The Apostle Paul also experienced Jehovah Jireh in his life. Consistently giving glory to God, Paul's entire life and ministry were devoted to glorifying God, and through this, he experienced God's provision. Glorifying God is not just about praise and worship, but signifies that our whole life is transformed into one that pleases God. When we glorified God, He reveals Himself through our lives and prepares amazing blessings for us. Experiencing Jehovah Jireh through living according to God's will. Living according to God's will means obeying His word. According to 1 Thessalonians 5:16-18, living a life of constant joy, prayer, and thanksgiving is living according to God's will. When we live this way, we can experience Jehovah Jireh every day. Living according to God's will is not just about following rules or obligations, but about being guided by Him in a relationship. When we follow God's will, we experience His provision more deeply. This is possible when we set aside our own plans and desires and prioritize God's will. This attitude of life expresses trust and love for God, resulting in daily experiences of His provision. God always prepares the best path for us, and when we live according to His will, we follow that path and enjoy His blessings. Experiencing Jehovah Jireh through reverence. Reverence is loving, respecting, and fearing God. This fear is not merely being afraid, but involves a deep respect and trust in God. When we revere God, we can experience Jehovah Jireh most deeply. Abraham gained a heart of reverence through the test of sacrificing Isaac, which led to the blessing of experiencing Jehovah Jireh daily. Reverence is a crucial element in our relationship with God, signifying absolute trust and obedience to Him. When we revere God, He works greatly in our lives, meets our needs, and protects us. Reverence also opens the way for us to receive God's guidance. In Abraham's case, his reverence allowed him to experience God's provision, deepening his faith. Through reverence, we experience God's grand and wonderful plans, and feel His love and faithfulness more deeply. Conclusion: living a life of experiencing Jehovah Jireh daily. To experience Jehovah Jireh, we need prayer, faith, obedience, thanksgiving, glorifying God, living according to God's will, and reverence. By applying these 6 keys, we can experience God's provision daily, enriching our lives and deepening our relationship with Him. God is always at work in our lives, and when we trust and follow Him, we will experience His provision. Living a life of experiencing Jehovah Jireh daily is not just about receiving blessings, but involves deep fellowship with God, leading to the satisfaction and joy of our souls. When we keep and practice these 6 keys in our hearts, God will fulfill His amazing plans for us, and we will enjoy new grace and blessings daily through His provision.